This is a webinar on everything you need to know about the credit department, which is about establishing credit for your clients. One of the beautiful things about working with Kaiser and Blair is that we have a credit department to handle this issue for us. In the promotional products industry, most people have to do all of this by themselves. They usually have to collect 50% upfront from their clients in order to place an order with the supplier, or they may have to establish credit on their own with the individual suppliers, but we don't have to. So all we have is money coming in and no money going out. I cannot imagine communicating with all the suppliers to get their invoices sorted out. I can't imagine getting myself approved for credit with all the suppliers I use weekly. I can't imagine having to pay them in advance. I can't imagine the time I'd find to do an actual invoice for all of the orders or finding time to mail them to my clients. I can't imagine having to pay for credit card processing fees. We don't have to do any of that. Or to make my collection calls, all of them. Or how about to figure out finance charges if people don't pay after 30 days? Trying to figure out that information. Or to do the follow-up invoices. People say they didn't get one or they haven't got it paid in 30 days, so they need another one. I can't imagine paying for the entire order if they don't pay. And I can't imagine not being able to accept very large volume orders. And just dealing with that side of the business. It's just something that we just have to do a couple little things where most people have to do a whole bunch of stuff. One item to consider is that large organizations and companies prefer to do business without paying in advance. This will also help you secure larger orders as well as build your trust factor with them if you're not asking for money up front. It's not necessary to try to get payment on large corporations or companies, government entities, or those with good credit. An easy way to establish credit for your clients is simply to ask them or investigate it online. How long has your client been in business? If they are a large corporation or a mid-sized business that has been in business for more than 3 years, chances are Kaiser and Blair will extend credit to them. This means that they will receive an invoice after they receive their products, net 30 days, meaning the invoice is due 30 days from the date of the invoice. I simply ask the client, how long have you been in business? And if they say to me, well, we've been in business for 14 years, I submit the order as an open account. And the credit department will notify you if there's any credit issues prior to proceeding with the order going to the supplier. So what the credit department will do is run a Dun & Bradstreet credit check. If they have a good credit rating under the amount of the order, they will extend credit. So if you place an order for $3,000 and their Dun & Bradstreet rating says that they have a $10,000 limit, then that means the order is going to go through. Let's say that they only have a $3,000 credit and your order is for $5,000. Now Kaiser and Blair might kick that back to you and say, we're going to need either some down payment or some more credit references in order to establish credit for your client. So the Dun & Bradstreet report will show how long they've been in business, what their reported credit rating is. And, this is only good for businesses. So if they're a me, myself, and I business, meaning that they're an individual real estate agent or insurance agent, for example, you're going to need a credit card regardless, as we do not extend credit to individuals. So even though they may work for someone, say State Farm, they are me, myself, and I. You can try it and see if it's going to go through depending on how they've set up their business, but most of those are going to be individual offices for State Farm. So they might be considered an actual individual. If you're working with a new company under 2 years, it's probably best just to go ahead and get a credit card for their first order. And that helps for them to establish credit with Kaiser and Blair as well. You can also do a credit application for small or new businesses or those people that you need to have larger volume credit extended. But you got to take note that this credit application takes a couple of days. They fill out the form, and then you can see there that they have their bank information and also trade references. I think there's 3 on there. And each one of those references are going to be called by someone at the credit department. So you got to understand that sometimes we're going to call and they're going to say, you're going to have to leave a message. Now you're waiting on that reference to call back. Or maybe they got a hold of them and they said, okay, well, I can't talk to you right now. And now you're waiting for them to call back. So hence for the delay. So if you have an event dated order, make sure you understand that the credit application can take more than a couple of days for approval. The credit application can be found online at kaisercentral.com and also in the training email that you should have received. So save it to your desktop and forward it to your clients as needed. Once it's complete, you can attach it like a piece of artwork to the initial order. Now let's talk about the state tax exemption form. Clients may ask you about taxes. Keep in mind that Kaiser & Blair has sales representatives in every state. We are expected and required to collect and pay taxes in every state that it's required. There are a couple states out there that don't have a state tax. But for most places, you're going to have tax that's going to be added to your order. And it's easy enough to just explain it to people. People don't want to break the law. If it's required, it's required. The exception to this rule is for nonprofits that will be state tax exempt. This is not federal tax exempt. This is state tax exempt. You can see the logo on here that it says the state of Maryland, for example. That's the kind of form it's going to say. It's not going to say this is a federal form. If that's it, you need to get the other one. You must get a form from that state for that client that they are indeed tax exempt. Typically, clients will have a copy of their state tax exemption on file. Most of them display it in their office. And they can email it to you or fax it to you. And you can simply attach this form just like you would the artwork on the Kaiser, and Kaiser & Blair will keep it on file. I keep a copy in the clients folder as well, just so that I have a copy. And if there's one that, the first one, they'll keep a copy and establish it. But, a year from now, maybe it'll pop up in a different location for that client. And we need to have that same one, and I'll just reattach it again. For government agencies, nonprofit groups with a tax-exempt status, and large corporations, credit is established 99% of the time. There's also a blank form that you can use on the Kaiser & Blair website if they just don't have it, although the original one is preferred. Now let's talk about checks. You can always get half down by check, but only do this if it's absolutely necessary, or you will not receive your commission until the balance is paid in full. The only other time that we do not get paid in full at the time of placing the order is if the supplier is not set up with Kaiser & Blair for established terms. This could be because they're a brand new supplier. They could be an overseas supplier, or simply haven't done business with Kaiser & Blair in the past. If that's the case, you are more than welcome to ask them if they'd be willing to let us set them up as a vendor with preferred terms with Kaiser & Blair. You can contact the credit department and they will walk you through that process, or they might contact them on your behalf because there's forms that they'll have to fill out and stuff. But 95% of suppliers already have established credit lines with Kaiser & Blair. So as you might figure out, I very rarely accept personal checks simply because we got to get paid on that when they pay the full bill. So I like to not do that, but I understand sometimes you can't. You might be working with a school, for example, that they're collecting money and they got to rewrite one whole big check back to you. So that would be one example for writing a check. If your client is working on a PO, a purchase order, meaning that it's on their stationery with all the details of the order listed, simply attach that like you would a piece of artwork to the order. So there you can see that they have their logo, they're listing out. I just picked one up off the internet, but it'll have the information, what the cost is, where it's shipping to, where all of that is. And here's the key point is they're going to have a purchase order. That is their internal purchase order. When you receive this from your client, you need to put this information in the purchase order spot on our order form. then that way when they print the invoice, it's going to have their PO number on the invoice so that they can match that up on their internal side. So if a client asks you, do we accept purchase orders? Say, yes, we do. And make the assumption that the credit will be approved. That doesn't mean it will, but I've never had one kicked back. If the client wants to pay by credit card, great. No problem there at all. But it's your responsibility to let them know that we will estimate the charges as closely as possible based on the order placed. So, for example, if they say we're going to order 1,000 pieces, you need to let them know you might get a few more, up to 10% more. You might even get less. 99% of the time, you're going to get more because they're going to try to fulfill your order. But this is part of the manufacturing process and very standard in our industry. So after the item's shipped, the supplier sends their final invoice to the home office. And there may be a difference between that final amount of product shipped. Might be a slight difference on the tax because if they count every one of them, they're going to be taxed on that. And same thing on the shipping. If the weight is just slightly different by that extra 18 pieces, then it might be slightly different for your actual shipping. And that's what we charge is the actual shipping. But the part I'm trying to make very important is that you got to let them know, especially if they're paying by credit card. At the time we place the order, we estimate as closely as possible. You may receive more, may receive less, and we're going to invoice you according to what you're actually shipped. The supplier will always try to fulfill the order, but you might get some more. If you don't explain this in advance, what's going to happen is they get their invoice. The first thing they see is that the amount isn't the same. So it might be 500 pieces and they got 516 pieces. Well, now that's off. So same thing on your shipping. You can estimate the shipping as closely as possible, either on the website or you've gotten an estimate from the home office. Whatever you did to get your estimate, you can let them know that. But again, it's still just an estimate. So if you audit, and then another thing to let them know is if they get an invoice after they've already paid by credit card and they've received their products now, and they have a small amount of, say, $14 difference, we are not going to automatically charge their card again. So if they get an invoice after they receive their products, they can pay by check or by credit card directly to Kaiser and Blair. So now it's time to talk about our credit report that we get weekly from the credit department at Kaiser and Blair. This comes to you via email if you're signed up for reports, and you better be signed up for this because this is very important. If you're not, just go to your front page on Kaiser Central and make sure that you are subscribed to all emails from them. It's very important for you to keep an eye on this and understand the process of what happens. So after the supplier has completed your client's order, they send the invoice to Kaiser and Blair. Kaiser and Blair puts it together, puts it on our stationery, and sends the invoice to your client. That could be either snail mail or via email, depending on how you set that up. A word about emails too. If you have your client set up that way, make sure that they understand where that is coming from so that they are not looking for an email from you. It very well could end up in their junk box until they have secured a connection with that email address and it doesn't end up in their junk box. So after 30 days, if there hasn't been a payment, Kaiser and Blair again is going to send another invoice. They're going to put a little cover letter on it that says, we probably understand you overlooked this, but it is still due. So they will do that at that point. At about 45 days, they will call your client on your behalf and try to get the payment. You may have had some communication with them at that point, as they might not have a good buyer, a phone number, a person to contact, depending on how you filled out your order, or maybe the invoice was just returned to them. Please respond to the credit department immediately with any issues on that. Keep good records. If you emailed somebody, keep that email somewhere in your database that says, oh, I got a credit issue here. So when you get that email from them, it kind of looks like this. This is an old one I just dug up. So basically what you have there is it has, your name on there, your dealer number, and what the past due is. It shows the order number, who the customer is, what they ordered, when the invoice date was done, and how many days, what the balance is due, and how many days old that invoice is. Meaning from the first date of the invoice, this person is at 72 days past due on this one and 71 days on this one. Keep an eye on that. Don't let those get overwhelming or you're going to start seeing chargebacks come back. On the new website, this is what it looks like at the top. And I love how they do this because they actually show what's current now. Then they show what's at the 30 days and what's at the 60 days and over. So that looks pretty good. And then they have another listing right underneath that pie chart that's going to show your customers that are outstanding as they are right now. So for example, this electric company has 2 invoices that are out. They have one at 60 days and they have another one at 90 days. This client, for example, has one invoice out that is at 60 days and so on. And then it goes down from there. Now, what I recommend is that you look at it every week, and anyone that's approaching this 60-day mark, that's when you send them an email. This guy right here at 90 days, that means I've already emailed them and I have called them. And this is a true one for me, and I have talked to him. His person who pays the stuff, she's been out sick, so he's having to deal with it. And so that's what the delay is there. But I'm sure it'll get paid because he's a good client. One thing I want you to notice here is when you see these really small ones like this is a $6 one. Keep an eye on those things as well. Sometime you might just send back a note to Kaiser and Blair Credit Department, or just look at their invoice versus what they paid. That might be a finance charge. It might be a difference in shipping. Now, for me personally, I look at it and say, well, if it's a finance charge, I'm going to send that back to Kaiser and Blair and ask them to remove that $6 fee because the balance has been paid in full. If they've missed it by, and what's more common is that people will pay off of the order acknowledgement, and so they haven't paid for the shipping and or tax. And if that's the case, I'll send them an email and say, hey, thanks for paying your bill. However, as I previously mentioned, shipping and tax is not included. And so you paid off of the acknowledgement, not the final invoice. So let me back up to that. The order acknowledgement is sent to your clients that says, thanks for your order, and here's a recap of it. It says all over it, do not pay from this. It's kind of a fraud protection thing for our clients and also for the company. We've had people that'll write orders for a client and, write a $2,000 order, get their $800 commission, and then they'll cancel the order. Shame on you if you're doing that, because that's not cool. But anyway, so that's kind of an order protection thing for everybody involved. So that way the client can call Kaiser and Blair and go, I didn't place this order. So know that that's going on, and you really can't do that. But I love how another thing about this new website breakdown too, is it shows what's past due first in severity. So this one comes up first. So that's the one you need to work on, because when we get over here, we're going to see a chargeback. So this is a copy of the just a template that I have already put together that I send out when people get to that 45-day state. And I'll just put my subject line in there as past due invoice from Promos. Like, gosh, I just can't believe it. Their first name goes in here. And I send this out of my database, and my database program will track what emails are open. So that's a really valuable thing when I'm doing collection calls, and hopefully you can find a way to make sure that it was received, so that way you can follow up correctly. So here it says, my credit department at Kaiser and Blair sent me a report and your account is on there. I hadn't heard of any issues with your order, so I hope this was just an oversight. Can you give me an update? Because this order is outstanding. And then what I do is I go back to the credit report, and I'll copy that information in there and clean it up. So it'll have the PO number, what the item is. On our report, it'll just say like invoice, INV. So I change that out and put invoice date. Then I spell that out for them. I show what it is actually due, and that it is 85 days past due. So I'll pick that information up off of the credit report that's emailed, and then I'll paste that in there. So it makes it nice and easy that way. And then I've also now added this here where it says you can send a check to Kaiser and Blair or pay online. Down below this, I have an actual address for Kaiser and Blair's payment location, or at the paykaiser.com. Super easy, and I'll show you that and explain a little bit more in a second. And then I have just I appreciate your prompt response. And then I always have my dealer number. See it there in red? It's not in red on my form, but I put that on there so that way there's no worries about what my dealer number is. And now they're coming back to me. I always try to insert some silly note to make it lighthearted because I don't want to be accusatory or hateful or mean, but I do want them to get it paid. So for example, I might say something like, I have enough calendars with my own name on them. I'd hate to have to pay for yours, something like that, and or if it's something that you have been dealing with, this is a good way to, reiterate that you have an issue with the product itself and that you're communicating with Kaiser and Blair about that. If you have any communication with your client, be sure to contact the credit department via email with the notes of the conversation. So if you talk to them and they say, oh gosh, we just put a check in the mail, let Kaiser and Blair know, because otherwise they might just be right on the next day, they got a list and they're going to call your client. Well, now you're going to make your client mad. So don't do that. So anytime you have a conversation with them, make sure and email them. That way you have a record of it. And that way you can keep them from hassling your client as well. But make sure you do a follow-up. So I'll put it on my calendar that I need to make sure that this guy said he put a check in the mail, give it some time to process, maybe a week or so, and then check it again and make sure that it's all done and that it is paid. Or do you need to make another phone call? Wait a couple days, make a phone call, check it again. So I want to make sure that you be very specific with people when you're first taking their order if you haven't done business with them before. And that's how I state it. Let me just let you know, because we haven't done business before, here's the procedure. So for example, we'll say, we'll set you up as a corporate account with Kaiser and Blair. That's our home office. They do all our invoicing for us. The invoice will reflect their logo, but have my dealer name and number on there. But please contact me directly for any questions you might have regarding the invoice. I want them to talk to me if there's any kind of issue first. After that, then I don't worry about it as much. Let the client know, especially on a first time that you're doing business, that shipping and tax is not included. Shipping will be the ground rate, either UPS or FedEx, and it'll be for the actual shipment weight from the supplier to the client. So it's distance and weight from the supplier to your client. Always let them know that they need to pay Kaiser and Blair directly. Don't let them pay you. And any purchase orders that they're doing need to be made out to Kaiser and Blair as well. It can certainly have your name on there, but it should reflect Kaiser and Blair's address and any other pertinent information. If I don't get a response from my email, and again, I can tell that they've opened it or not, I will call them usually the next week. I'll wait, usually I'll go, if I send it on Tuesday and I haven't seen that they've opened it, the following Tuesday, on Wednesday, I'll call them, because by then they surely should have seen it by now. And if you're new to this and making collection calls, you may want to put a script together that's similar to the email template I just showed you. Again, don't be accusatory, at least not on the first call, and ask them, when do you expect the payment to be made? On subsequent calls and emails, you can mention that their credit rating might be affected, that we do report back to Dun & Bradstreet as well. And a lot of times when I get to that second or third phone call or email, I'll say, I know you didn't mean for this to go to collections, or if it's a big one, I know you didn't mean for this to go to our attorney. And that usually will get us a response right away. But again, if you pre-explain the procedure at the beginning, you're probably going to have a lot less, less problems. I've gone all the way to, I've had to leave a message that said, if I don't get a call back from you in 48 hours, this will go to collection and could end up in our attorney's office. Yet sometimes they just don't pay. Maybe they go out of business, maybe something happened, who knows? It happens now and then. So use your gut feeling. If they're brand new and they want it in a rush and they want a super cheap price, they're probably going to haggle you on the credit card too. So use your gut. If I have somebody that's like, oh, I need this right away and I found it over there, I'm going to get their credit card. I'm just not going to even mess with them because that usually is going to give you an indication on how they're going to treat you with everything else involved in your business. So use your gut. And if they're going to go out there and buy from anybody else out there, they're going to be required to get a credit card up front. And usually that's in full. This is the Paykazer site. Super easy. You literally go to paykazer.com. You put in the customer number, which is on their invoice, and you can also find that within the Kaiser and Blair system. You plug in their zip code and you plug in your dealer number. You hit the customer lookup, and it will list the invoices that are outstanding for that client. They can pay them all, check, pay them all with a credit card. Wonderful thing. So if somebody calls you and says, well, let me give you my credit card, then you can do that as well. Just go to paykazer.com, put in their number, boom. And then there's a place for you to put in where do you want the receipt to go. I always put that in to go to the clients. That way they have a copy saying this is in process and here's your payment receipt. Or I'll send them back an email and let them do it. So if they want to give it to me over the phone, I'll just go do it. I don't make them go through that step. It's a beautiful thing that they get the confirmation right away. It's a super easy thing that they don't have to log in, get an account, anything like that. Just 3 simple things, click and pay. So if your client doesn't pay after 150 days, you will be charged back your commission and basically have done the order for free, meaning you wasted your time. So the good news is that's the most you can lose is your commission. You're not responsible for the entire order. The credit department will also make payment arrangements for those who get in a bind. So make sure and offer that. If you get somebody that's over 60, 90 days, say, would it help if we made payment arrangements? And then what you can do is suggest something and then say, well, let me check with my credit department and see if they will authorize that. You are not authorized to make such payments arrangements, but you can certainly suggest something, or if your client suggests something, you can say, well, let me talk to them and see if they will do that. So if your client contacts you about our payment arrangements after they place an order, have them contact the credit department directly, or you can do it on their behalf. But if they break that agreement, you may see a chargeback in the future. We're very lucky to have a credit department who will extend credit. We are very lucky to have a credit department that will do our invoices. We are super lucky to have someone that's doing collection calls. You don't have to do them, but I surely recommend you do. You're the one that's established the relationship with that client. Don't just let it go on and on and on without no communication with them. You're going to lose money, number one. You get these chargebacks. And it might be just a simple understanding. It might be, oh, our P.O. box number is wrong. We haven't received that. You should be finding out that information. So we're very lucky that they're able to do that on our behalf. And we're lucky that we are able to accept larger orders that companies want to pay for after they receive those products. Our credit department allows our promo business to grow. Make it a great day.